Hello, my name is Megan Baker, and I'm doing my presentation on Chapter 13 of our Gas and Seiter textbook, which is the Motivational Appeals chapter. So, motivational appeals was defined in the textbook as external inducements, often of an emotional nature, that are designed to increase an individual's drive to undertake some course of action. An example used in the book was authors needed a new rain gutter installed, and so the salesman, upon arriving to his house, he gets out of this really old car and he kind of shuffles around and he just looks upset and he looks sad. He looks very discouraged, like he had a bad day. And he proceeds to tell the author about how bad that day really was and how he got a ticket and all of these awful things had happened to him. And the author signed that day with this man, signed the contract, which wasn't something that normally happened to him. And it was because of external that external thing that happened to the salesman. So it had nothing to do with the message, had nothing to do with, anything going on with him. It was just something besides the message that happened. Intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation comes from inside of you. The whole live to work phrase is intrinsic motivation. That's basically the definition. It's those people, we all know one of those people that is just so excited to get to work and they just love it, and there's no motivations around them for it other than they're just so excited and they love it. Whereas extrinsic is caused by some sort of outside factor, like the term work to live, which basically can be living paycheck to paycheck, kind of. So like you have to go to work because you have to pay rent that day. You have to go to work because you need money, is a motivational factor in why you're working. It's not just because you love it. You might hate McDonald's with your whole life, but you go because you need to pay the bills. So that would be extrinsic motivation. Logical and emotional appeals are often viewed as opposites, but whether a message is logical or emotional has a lot to do with how someone will perceive it. So for example, when people agree on things, they typically in their minds will think, oh, we both agree? Yeah, this is logical because we both agree it's a fact. Whereas when people disagree, it seems more emotional. So if two people are working on designing an advertisement and one person thinks the wording should say one thing and one person thinks the wording should say another thing, they might think, oh, I'm being so rational. Why is this person being so emotional about their decision? Why are they holding on to their opinion so much and being so emotional when mine is rational and mine is logically the way to go? Fear appeals are doing something because of fear. Fear is the motivation. And there's a couple different ways that you can look at a fear appeal. One is the goosebumps factor. It's very straightforward and basically means the more fear that a person has, that the more vulnerable they will feel and the more likely they will listen to what you're saying, and they will listen and they'll more likely be persuaded. So if I am in a house with somebody and there is some sort of scary thing outside, and I'm really scared and I don't know what's going to happen, and the person with me tells me an action to take, I'm very likely to take that action because I'm scared, because I am fearful. The extended parallel process model is a dual process model that suggests people engaged in danger control or fear control when they're scared. So danger control focuses more on the solution, whereas the fear control focuses on the problem. So one of the examples used in our textbook, great example of a boy seeing an HIV poster, and it says sex minus condoms equals HIV. So he could take that two different ways. He could engage in danger control or fear control. If he engages in danger control, then he either will use a condom or he won't have sex at all. Because if this is the problem right here and he's heading towards the problem, and he finds a solution and he takes it, and he won't even have the problem in the first place. Fear control will be more of a, oh, don't worry about it, oh, like telling himself, oh, don't worry about it, it'll be okay, everything will be fine. It's not focused on a solution, it's looking at the problem and kind of facing it head on instead of facing a solution head on. Pity and guilt is very popular in fundraising and in like telethons and posters that are trying to get money for hospitals, that kind of thing. So if you see a fundraising poster, it's not as likely there will be very positive words written on that poster. There might be, but it might not be a very successful advertising. So it's more likely they will be used if it was children in a hospital, if that was what's being fundraised for. The words dependent and incapable are very likely to be used because it doesn't paint the children in a bad light, but it's not like a positive, oh, they're very strong and they're very willing and they can do lots of different things. If I saw a poster like that, I might not donate to that because it's like, oh, they're strong, they've got this, they're very brave. But if I see a poster that describes them as incapable, I will feel the need to donate, and I will feel the need to take action and to help out because I'll feel guilty. Humorous appeals, there are so many humorous appeals, and it's very, very common. Humorous advertisements account for 21 to 48% of all advertising. There are many ways to use humor to persuade, which makes it popular and effective. So there's a lot of different humor appeals. There's a lot of different ways to go about it. You can use humor to capture attention of your audience or distract from a message. So if you made a joke and it was racist, then it's less likely that people will focus on the actual message, and they'll probably, because the joke distract from the message, as opposed to you just stating the racist comment. Relatedness of humor. Humor integrated into a message is related humor, and if it's in standalone fashion, it's unrelated. So related humor it thrives a little bit more in persuasion because the recipient has to do less mental gymnastics to get from the joke being made and the point and the message. Whereas if it's related humor, it's all right there in that one statement. So studies have shown that humor enhances perceptions of trustworthiness It can increase your likability, can make you seem more socially attractive, but it can possibly hurt you in the expertise category. If you're making a joke about something, then it's more likely that people will like you and will enjoy you as a person, but it's less likely that they'll take you very seriously and see you as like an expert in a subject. So like the example with the salesman, with him selling the rain gutter and telling his client about the terrible day he had, making oneself the object or brunt of a humorous appeal can help persuade in that same kind of sense. Like you'll feel pity, but also it will be funny. They kind of tie together a little bit. Social proof involves modeling our behavior after the actions or reactions of others. So it's a little more focused on how people are reacting to what you're saying. Is humor persuasive? Humor can assist persuasion in a lot of different ways. Humor can help things move along. There's been a lot of attempts to get a straightforward answer. Is it persuasive, yes or no? And there's a lot of mixed results, but one thing that kind of continuously will come back is sometimes it will help persuade and sometimes it doesn't, but it's pretty rare that humor will backfire when trying to persuade. Pride and patriotism is very prevalent in America with USA. In the 2008 election, Obama was torn apart for the lack of American flag pin on his lapel. People saw his address and they saw that he wasn't representing the country, and they just tore him apart. They hated him. Maybe they hated him for other reasons, but they used that against him a lot. It's sort of like Pride and Patriotism is very similar to the BYU and Utes rivalry in Utah, because no matter what really happens, no matter if BYU loses all their football games, BYU fans will still cling to BYU because of their pride and their pride for BYU, which can definitely be used in persuading somebody. Sex appeals are used in a lot of different ways. A really good example, I only vaguely remember this, and it's probably because I was little when they stopped, so I wasn't very exposed to like sex appeal advertisements, but the Carl's Jr. classic, Carl's Jr., the pretty woman with the bikini holding the hamburger, and everyone goes crazy because, oh my gosh, this woman is so sexy and she's holding a hamburger. So basically it stimulates the brain to associate sexy with Carl's Jr., which is so looking at it straight on, like from an outsider's perspective who wasn't really exposed to all these commercials, that is just the weirdest concept for me, because Carl's Jr. burgers, they're kind of greasy, they drip off the side of your mouth when you eat them. I don't think sexy when I think of Carl's Jr., but now so many people do because of those sex appeal commercials. And your brain will basically either think that you will look, act, or feel sexier if you have one of those hamburgers, or that sexy people will be attracted to you if you've got the ketchup dripping all over your mouth. Cautions with sex appeals, they aren't always effective. Sometimes they can seem sexist. Sometimes they can just seem plain offensive. There are so many different ways that sex appeal can go wrong in persuasion. So it definitely has a lot of things that can backfire. Warmth appeals works very similar sex appeal does, through association. Warmth appeal gives consumers a warm, cozy feeling. For example, when I see this picture right here, next time I eat a cookie, if this were an advertisement, the next time I see a cookie, I'll probably associate, oh, cute, happy, warm family, sweet little girl with bangs. I'll probably associate family and warmth and coziness when I eat a cookie, because your brain has connected these two things together. Ingratiation is a researcher's term for brown nosing. It's flattery, it makes people like you, and it creates perceptions of similarity, or it can work through social labeling. It's just doing whatever you can to get someone to like you, which is very persuasive. The classic term teacher's pet is, it's very negative from like a classmate point of view, from like a peer, but the teacher might really like the teacher's pet. They might think, oh yeah, they're my favorite, even though I guess they don't have favorites, but teachers have favorites, I know it. Yeah, so that's essentially ingratiation. It's just a research term for flattery. There are so many other appeals and combinations of appeals that can go together. Honor, youth, beauty, shame, freedom, environment are just a couple. And appeals can also be combined together, like punishment and reward are two really popular ones that will. That if you do something, you'll be rewarded, and if you don't do that something, you'll be punished, which is why it drives you to do it even more. So there's a lot of other appeals, motivational appeals, and things that can be used to persuade others. Thank you.